Well, let's just get right into it. GPOX is positioning itself to become the largest nationwide DSD distribution company servicing gas stations and convenience stores, backed by a scalable network of regional hubs, mini hubs, and PRISM plus AI automation. So, how would you describe where GPOX stands today compared to 2 years ago, and what this new phase of growth means for the company?
I guess we are going to jump right into it. Okay, sounds good. Well, Eric, first and foremost, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Us upstate New Yorkers have to stick together, man. So yeah, GPO
That's
Plus,
right.
we're at such an exciting time right now. And if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of not critique, but kind of modify your question. Instead of 2 years, can I do 2.5 years? Because that's really when we, got into the DSD
Go
business.
for
Yeah, and then that's what we're really excited about. So what got us into the business was an acquisition of a DSD distributor out of Lubbock, Texas, that was servicing multiple states, and they had relationships with national gas station chains. Well, they were initially in the hemp industry, and they had what's called the Feel Good Shop located right next to the cash register at hundreds of locations. And we saw this as an amazing opportunity, not just because of the hemp aspect, but because they had such a fantastic footprint to start off with. And of course, we had that real estate right next to the cash register. But one of the problems was it's a tough business. So they were trying to figure it out. They had routes that were inefficient. They had one distribution center servicing the entire service area. And so when we looked at this, we said, okay, we know it's going to be a challenge. We're up for the challenge because this could be unbelievable. And so we acquired the company in December of 2022, moved all the contracts over, started building out our infrastructure in April of 2023, and that's when we went live. When we went live, we were doing about $90,000 a month, a little over $1 million a year in gross sales. And I got to tell you, Eric, this has been some of the most challenging couple of years of our lives because what we did is twofold. One is I saw this opportunity, my team saw this opportunity, and we said, we're going to do one thing and one thing only. We're going to get really, really good at what's called DSD, direct store distribution. And for the listeners out there, direct store distribution DSD model is a little bit different than what most people are used to. I'm sure a lot of the viewers have seen people at gas stations or convenience stores or groceries where they go and they drop off a pallet in the back of the store. Well, that's drop shipping, broadline, etc. What we do is we actually send our drivers to all these locations. So yes, it is a little labor intensive, but it is a white glove service. But we send our drivers to all these locations every single week. Our drivers have all the replenishment on them. We've built out some amazing whiz-bang technology, which hopefully we can get into later, called PRISM, where we take a before picture and after picture, and the manager signs off on it. And that's how we've been able to get really efficient with the drivers, the stops. And it started as, as you can imagine, as a tool for us to be compliant with GAAP accounting, ASC 606 to be very specific with revenue recognition. This app that we developed initially satisfy all of those needs. But my team is a bunch of technologists, and you can't have a bunch of technologists sitting around there with technology saying, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, because the next thing you know, we're finding out stuff like, well, how much time is each driver spending at each route? What's the windshield time in between stops? How can we make routes more effective? How do we get notes in the system from our front line, the managers, the clerks, and everything else? And so that kind of morphed into PRISM, which hopefully we'll get into later. And that's the AI aspect of our business, which has been fantastic. But going back to our model, yeah, we kind of got our teeth kicked in a little bit because, again, it's hard. If I realized how hard it was, I probably wouldn't have gone down this path. But we've really figured it out. And along the way, we've assembled one heck of a team, and we have the pedigree to really take this to the next level. So for the last 2.5 years, when we started about $89,000 a month in sales, we've learned a lot. We've documented everything. And now we're excited because we feel like we've carved out a fantastic model. And we made a lot of mistakes with 500 locations. And when I say mistakes, what I mean by that is when you're trying to innovate, of course, not everything is going to work the way you want it to. Not everyone's Elon Musk, right? So, you have to try things. You have to, learn from your mistakes, make it better, and then build a really serious business model. And that's kind of where we're at. Not kind of, that's exactly where we're at now. And moving forward, what we're looking forward to is growth. So we're now going from learning, and moving into a growth mode. And along the way, we've went from $90,000 a month to well over $500,000 a month and 6x our revenue. So we're really excited about that. And I'll tell you, everything's
Great.
going great for us, and we can't wait to really kick this into overdrive.
Right on. And you know what? It's somebody told me this earlier. You fail forward. That's how it works. And so I love that perception that you guys have. And right, you are representing a fast scaling, technology driven distribution company that it's actively consolidating the fragmented 15 to 20% of the market traditionally serviced by small regional vendors. A mission aligned with defending free enterprise and innovation. So, what does speaking at the New York Principal Business Summit, for example, represent for GPOX, and what message are you bringing to an audience of major thought leaders like that? For those that don't know, he did speak at the Principal Business Summit, so that's a big deal. So tell us about that.
One thing that they teach you in business school is stay away from politics and religion, right? So in my case, I can't duck that. My last name's Pojunis. There's very few of us in the world, so I wouldn't be able to be anonymous. I spent about a decade in politics. I was, I want to say I was one of the good guys. I was chairman of the Libertarian Party of Nevada for 2 terms. I'm based here in Las Vegas. 3 terms on a Libertarian National Committee. Either participant, fellow, senior fellow at multiple organizations ranging from like Leadership Institute, Turning Point USA, State Policy Network, Nevada State Policy Research Institute, Veterans in Politics. So I was very much involved in politics. And when I was doing that, I was also traveling a lot, not just in Nevada. I mean, on the Libertarian National Committee, I represented 5 states all across the country from California to New York. And so I was constantly on the road, constantly traveling, always supporting all the nonprofit think tanks and all the other related agencies that were trying to advance, liberty, freedom, free market, capital principles and stuff of that nature. And one of my friends, superstar guy, I can't wait to see him in London for his wedding, Alexander McCoven. So this guy was super sharp when I first met him, probably 17 years ago. And he started an organization called SFL, Students for Liberty. And he did a hell of a job growing out all these student chapters globally, not just in the US, but globally, and brought a huge amount of eyes and attention and young new blood into the liberty movement. And so we would always pal around because I'd see him at all the conferences, conventions, state conventions, Freedom Fest, all the different events that we'd go to, and we'd always pal around. Well, anyway, I exited from politics in January 2017, and that's about the same time Alexander brought in a big donor into Students for Liberty named John Mackey from Whole Foods. And John Mackey wrote a book called Conscious Capitalist. And the premise of the book, I'm really going to, dilute it down, but it's advancing capitalism for good. How can capitalists who've had the privilege of being successful utilize that success to do better in your community, with your people and everything else, and really try and remove that negative stigma, like the monopoly guy, if you will, that's associated with capitalism. And so John was so impressed with him, he asked him to be CEO of Conscious Capitalists, a 501c3 that they set up to advance those principles. They did that for a number of years. And then they set up a fund called Liberty Ventures, like a venture fund. And they're supporting founders that have libertarian and capitalism values and want to advance capitalism for good. And then one more, there's a 501c3 also called Principled Business. And that's really what the crux of your question was. So it took me a long way to get here. Principled Business is a continuation of, trying to do what John was doing with Conscious Capitalists, but then taking it further and really pushing that into the business community, not pushing like forcing, but like, getting the word out there to different, business leaders, young and upcoming entrepreneurs, and the same thing, put practical stuff in place instead of theoretical, and get the next generation of entrepreneurs all teed up, being pro-capitalist and pro-liberty. With all that said, the people that they attract for this group, I mean, I shouldn't even be in this group, to be honest with you, but, like I was just in New York, Vivek Ramaswamy was there, Tim Draper was there. Last year, I introduced Steve Forbes. The video is up on our website. If you go to gpoplus.com and then click on the newsroom, or just search, Steve Forbes, it will come right up. And the caliber of people are just unbelievable. And, it's getting better and better as we continue to grow it. So with that said, we have, when I say we, because again, it's very much Alexander's founder, CEO, but it's very much, he encouraged us to get involved and take ownership in it. So we help promote it. We help with the events and everything else. But the people we've been able to attract are unbelievable. And it's a level of pedigree that I've never really been able to surround myself with. And so it's just really an interesting thing. So moving forward, I'm working with a couple of these main business leaders to then again continue advancing capitalism. So what that means for GPO Plus is, again, it's tough for public companies to take political stances. I don't really think this is a political stance as much as it's a economic stance, talking about how we need to promote free markets, how we have to get rid of cronyism from business. And cronyism, of course, is defined as whenever you have politicians and government involved in business and you have politicians and government choosing winners and losers. It's very dangerous. We can't stand it. And we want to have people that are principled moving forward. And if you look at the core values of GPO Plus, which is also on our website, you'll see that a lot of what I just shared with you and your audience is very much aligned with our core values moving forward. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. I apologize, man.
I love everything you just mentioned, by the way, because I honestly think getting youth involved in these things, that's what builds the future. And so, guys, just to let you know, conscious capitalism, liberating the heroic spirit of business, is only $10 on Amazon, but even better, it's free with an Audible trial. So, I'm going to be listening to this one on the way to work. So, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, you'll love it. I think John said he has another version, like an updated version. It either just came out or it's coming out right now. And what they do is they kind of, I believe they modernize it a little bit. And again, like everything else, things evolve, ideas evolve, situations evolve. And so to respond to that, they did an updated version, or it's about to come out. But please read it, because it's all the pillars of capitalism, the foundation of capitalism. And let me tell you why this is important. I'm going to get on the soapbox one more time, if you don't mind, Eric. But the reason that this is so important is this, and it blew my mind, and this should scare everybody that's listening to this. In 1985, when you looked at young adults ages 18 to 29, 80 to 85% of them either had a favorable view and identified as a capitalist, whereas 12% was socialist and rounding error for capitalism. Fast forward the clock 40 years to 2025, same group, 18 to 29 young adults, 60 to 62% have a favorable view or identify as a socialist, followed by 34 to 36% capitalists. And this is where it gets scary. 33%, a third of young adults either identify or have a favorable view of communism. So we don't have the luxury anymore as a community, as a country, to just, excuse my language, when someone comes up and says something crazy, you say, oh, well, you're an idiot, and walk away. We can't do that anymore, because we have to change hearts and minds. We're not going to do that, by belittling people and berating people. We want to try and just explain, like, you don't really understand what you're saying. You don't know these words coming out of your mouth. You don't know what fascism is, or you never say that to anybody. So I think it's really an important project that we're working on. And I've actually got a book that I'm working on that hopefully I'll share with you in the future, but it's called Defending Capitalism as a working title. And it's basically giving the rebuttals for all the most common critiques about capitalism. Wow. And so, and how to combat that, but not combat that, but how to have the conversation, where first and foremost, you have to remove emotion out of the equation, deconstruct the conversation, get on the same level, everyone's human, and find out what their real issue is. And if I can give you an example, it's like, when people say, capitalists hate the environment, you want to kill the planet. Before you say, you're an idiot, and just walk away, because that's not true. Now we have to say, okay, I hear you. Why do you think that? Well, capitalists put greed and profit above everything else, and so they don't care if the environment gets polluted. It's like, well, okay, I'm still hearing you, but like, what's your solution? You want to put green energy everywhere? You want to have windmills? You want to have solar panels? You want to have renewable energy? Where do you think that was innovated from? That all came from a capitalist person, motivated by doing the right thing, and motivated by creating a market around it and generating profit. So that's the stuff that we need to start talking about moving forward, and really getting things out there.
Absolutely. And, I think in education, and I think the education system is a lot to blame for this, because there's a glorification of socialism and communism. And if you look at it, when it's done, it's 99% of the time, it's never good. All right. And so I love everything that you're talking about here. And it resonates with me, and I completely understand it, and I agree with you. And it's scary, but you know what? And I got to just comment on that, because it's not a shock that they're turning to this, because the system for the last 30 years has failed youth. And so back in the day, you could graduate high school, get a job, and you can afford an apartment and a car. You cannot do that these days. So like when people are saying, oh, you got to move out and just, go to work. Hey, we're not in the same system. And my dog agrees. If he has a dog in the background,
yeah, I do.
Agrees with everything I'm saying. But like, the system, we need to turn the system in favor of the youth, and and I think you're going to start. They need to see the rewards of capitalism.
Exactly.
They're not. They haven't been able to see that. So.
Exactly. What they hear is cronyism. And so, again, for all your viewers, if we keep talking, which is a great thing, but by the end of this, everyone's going to start looking up Milton Friedman and become like a free market capitalist libertarian. But what I would like to do is, direct everyone to principalbusiness.org and check out our manifesto, check out the website. This is the organization. We have accelerator programs. We're working on venture funds to help support these young entrepreneurs that are like-minded. I don't want to turn off the viewers that came here for GPOX.
Yeah, let's keep it going. All right, so GPO Plus's model has been validated. All right, and you mentioned this earlier, near 6 times revenue growth since entering DSD, expanding margins, driven by PRISM Plus efficiency. So you have manufacturing strategy and consolidation of high margin convenience stores across the country. All right, this is huge. So what were the biggest drivers behind the jump from 1.1 million to a 6.3 million run rate? And how were you able to expand margins from 15 to 28% at the same time? That's remarkable.
Kiernan, Brian, Carol, Mary, like all the team. The team is amazing. The team was able to do a lot of just revolutionary things. Notably, was able to establish some trends, introduce some new products and new product categories that we currently were not distributing. Kiernan has a fantastic. I want to get into the team later, but Kiernan has a fantastic background. So does Carol, with working in big box retail. So this is just a day that ends in Y and a cakewalk comparative to what they did earlier on in their career. So I attribute them for increasing our margins from 15 to 28%. That's a huge win, and that just has to do with being great margin improvement, great vendor relationships, understanding the markets, understanding how to price things. It's funny because Kiernan once heard me on the phone talking about the Feel Good shop when we were reconfiguring. This is before she was working with us, reconfiguring the layout. I'm like, yeah, we'll put the gummies up in the top left, put the vapes in the bottom right. She looks at me, she's like, do you have any data to make those decisions? I'm like, no, it looks good. She starts laughing at me. She's like, do you want some help? I'm like, absolutely I do. And so, she taught me a lot about how, the merchandising side, which is a whole world in itself. But no, the reason we got there is we have a great team, and the vision that I set was, listen, we're going to get really, really good at DSD. In all of our warehouses, we're going to have coffee makers, and I want an SOP on the coffee maker. Like, we need this to be consistent, and I need it to be where if we have a driver that needs to cover for somebody in Albuquerque and he or she is based in Dallas, the warehouse is the same, the trucks are packed the exact same way, how they interact with the store is the exact same, gathering information, how they enter the store. Like, we were trying to get everything so consistent so that we can really scale this thing up, because making things easy, you've probably heard, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos talk about this before, but making things simple and easy is very challenging. It's very challenging. And so that's what we spent a lot of the time doing. And then along the way, we found new opportunities. And you have to look at it like this. Look at the economies of scale. So right now we're in about 500 stores. So if I increase revenue by $1 per store per month, that's $500 per month, right? Well, what happens when I get to 5,000 stores? And instead of doing $1,000 a month, we're doing $3,000 a month. Well, that's 1.5 million. Our goal right now is to scale up to 20,000 locations. And quite frankly, we built out and invested in the foundation and the infrastructure to allow for that. So this isn't a pipe dream. This is what we spent the last couple of years building. And the crazy thing, like you pointed out earlier, Eric, is we did experience some massive revenue growth, but we actually decreased the store count that we have just by getting more efficient with the stores. And so, and right now, some of our top stores, not many, but they're generating over $5,000 a month. So it can be done, and we have such a limited product catalog. And so as we increase our product catalog and our product offering, obviously our goal is to get more products in more stores, but we want to get the right products. We don't want to have products that sit around, have a shelf life, expire, don't have the margins that our retail partners get excited about. We want products that move, products that have a high sales velocity. In addition to that, again, we didn't know what we were doing. We were starting, so we're going to make some mistakes. We just wanted to get warehouses for the sake of getting warehouses, not like a long-term thing, because we were scaling so rapidly. And so all of our warehouses initially had swamp coolers, which is, business as usual standard in the industry. However, one of the challenges is you need to have what's called ambient cooling. That means you have to have air conditioning. It's a cute way of saying that. If you want to have food products, like beef jerky, potato chips, etc. And so in order to achieve that, we had to upgrade our entire warehouse network, and we're still doing that now. We're almost done. We still have a few more to go, but the momentum is definitely behind us. And once that happens, the significant aspect is we can go back to our retail partners, ask them to send out a site inspector, get the approval to then go into food products. And you mentioned it earlier, that the fragmented market, the 15 to 20%, which I'd love to get into in a second. This would allow us to go after what we think is going to be massive business for us, which is the distribution and warehousing of all these retail chains, private label products. So you'd be shocked at how many of these gas station and convenience stores. And by the way, do you know how many? I think you do know, but the audience, I'd love to have them think about this before we answer. How many gas stations and convenience stores are there nationwide? Because I did not know. And shame on me for getting involved in this industry and not doing all my due diligence. But Eric, you do know how many there are, right?
I know the answer to that.
Yeah, please enlighten everybody.
All right, and this is crazy. We're going to talk a little bit about this later, but we're talking convenience stores and gas stations, 152,396. And the fun fact here is that 63.1% of these are
independent
operators.
You are right. That's truly the market we want to get into. And so I don't want to go all Saul Lewinsky, the ends justify the means, but one of the reasons that when you look at our approach to how we're planning on entering this growth mode, is we're going after national chains. Well, why would we go after national chains? Well, that's how we can get to, economies of scale, where when we're placing orders for 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 10,000, 20,000 locations, all of a sudden our MOQs, our minimum order quantity, comes down so low, and it doesn't even matter because we're buying so much anyway. But on top of that, it's really the price. Once the more we scale, the better price we can get. And quite frankly, a lot of investors said, well, Brett, why is your company called GPO Plus? Well, GPO stands for Group Purchasing Organization. And so our original motto was aggregate, negotiate, and share. And this will probably sum it up for all your viewers. So what I mean by that is we aggregate the purchasing power of our entire network. We leverage that with different manufacturers and vendors to get fantastic discounts. Then we share those discounts with our members. It's a beautiful business model, and it makes us kind of industry agnostic. Yes, we're very laser focused right now in DSD, but that doesn't mean we can't enter into new industries, new markets with that same business model. And we're going to start by proving that out with the independent gas stations and convenience stores in this industry. And what I mean by that is this: we might not be able to get a single store operator or a very small chain the same pricing structure that we can a national chain, but we can offer them a very similar level of service. What we can do is, help them by solving their biggest issues. It's a one-person, shop in most cases. When we're dealing with these chains and we have to go in and we have to, do a product presentation, whatever, we're sitting there with all these category managers and all these people with all this data and all these very smart people that are invested heavily. Whereas an individual, it's just one person saying, I just hope I make the right decision. Help me make the right decision because I can only fail so much. I have limited resources. And so we're able to then go in and really put together a curated solution for even at the individual store level. And again, because of the quantity of products that we're buying, the prices we're getting, we'll be able to save them a lot of money. And anyone that knows me knows that I love small business. I want to do everything I possibly can to support small business. And they're the ones getting, screwed the most right now. All right. And not we, because I'm part of that group now. So, I hope I answered your question, but can I talk about one other thing and build on that a little?
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Well, here's the interesting thing. So yeah, it's great that there's 152,000 plus gas stations and convenience stores nationwide. Mind you, that does not account for any of the bodegas, any of the specialty retailers, groceries. I mean, it's just probably our TAM, total addressable market, is probably between 550 and 620,000 businesses. That's a big number. But just going back to focus on the gas stations and convenience stores, that industry generates over $859 billion annually. But now let's get rid of motor and fuel sales. The in-store sales, and this is what I want everybody in your audience to pay attention to. The in-store sales is $327.6 billion. So $327.6 billion and growing. Now, what I mentioned a couple minutes ago is one of the biggest takeaways, one of the biggest things we learned over the last 2.5 years while getting really good at DSD is if you look around, I don't care what city, state you're in, go to a gas station, convenience store, and you walk around the store, 80 to 85% of all the products you see, they're distributed by just a handful of distributors. Your Hackney, McLean, Cormark, Pepsi, Coke, Red Bull, Frito-Lay, etc. But the other 15 to 20%, that's where you have the biggest opportunity. It's an area of the stored, when I say not an area, I mean like an area of the industry that has experienced rapid growth. It's highly fragmented. And that's in some cases with these national chains, to cover that 15 to 20% could be dozens in the cases of some of our retail partners, over 54 vendors. And what we can do is come in and consolidate all that, where these national chains and these individual stores, they're working with us. We can supply a lot of these products, and we can solve a lot of problems for them and make their lives tremendously easy. And why would they do that? Well, because we have that DSD white glove service. We're already in their store every week anyway. Why not load us up with more products? So we'll go out and source the best products. We'll find the best in class, best in breed products that we can find at the best prices and make that available to all of our customers. Then in addition to that, unlike most distributors, we do things very differently because we go to the stores weekly. We have data. So don't think I'm crazy when I say in the next 2 or 3 years, it's very likely that GPO Plus could be a data company, because we're just going to have so much granular data where we can establish trends at the SKU level, at the city level, at the store level. And so, we're really excited about, and then God forbid you're able to, massage that and synthesize that data with not just, Kiernan and Carol, but also with, with AI and setting the parameters and really being able to establish trends before they come and before they happen. And the competitive advantage that gives us as GPO Plus is we're nimble, man. We're quick. So if something happens, we can get into that industry faster than any of these majorly well-established distributors. So yeah, there's a lot of blue ocean there, man. But that 327.6 billion, we're targeting 15 to 20% of that is just fragmented and needs to be consolidated. And I think that's going to be the main catalyst for our growth over the next decade.
Excellent. That's what brings us to PRISM Plus, the AI platform, right?
Yeah.
This is a fully in-house AI system that automates routing, worker management, store-level customization, inventory forecasting, mobile driver tools, and the list goes on and on and on, positioning you guys as a tech-first distributor. So tell us more about it. What makes PRISM Plus such a critical competitive advantage, and how does the platform help you scale efficiently without heavy overhead?
Great question. So PRISM is kind of like a pet project with Brian and I. Brian and I have been working together for a long time. And when we looked at this, when we enter into the DSD space, we knew immediately that we had to have some sort of technology to give us some sort of competitive advantage or an edge, or at least, find an area where we can level the playing field with these massive, 100-plus-year-old distributors. And so we started with, as I mentioned earlier, with the mobile app, and to satisfy ASC 606 with revenue recognition. And then again, like I mentioned, it said, the conversation started off with, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And the next thing you know, we've got this tech stack held together with scotch and the scotch tape and glue, but it's working for our purpose. And now I'm really excited to share with you guys that we are starting to redevelop the whole platform from the first line of code and the wireframe. And we've got some ways that we're going to be able to do this and get this to market very quickly, initially as an internal tool, because obviously there's things that we need that are specific and custom to our business, and then also making it available as a SaaS, as a software as a service, and offering that not just in our industry, we're industry agnostic. Any type of industry that requires like a field service agent or a driver or a distributor or anyone that does any type of service appointment, we feel that we can develop something that's really awesome because we have so much experience, so we're not doing a cookie cutter model and, trying to use a custom field that says, store manager, and that's where we put our planogram, so we're trying to build it out and be as, flexible as we possibly can to hit all industries, but yet unique enough to focus in on ours. And so I'll have some updates for that probably mid to late January would be my guess. But that's from now till then, we're in a complete sprint to try and get this new technology out there. But what it does it allows for us, as I mentioned, I think earlier, to really synthesize this data, look at these trends, see what's happening, understand why drivers spend more time in different stores over other stores. Route efficiency goes without saying. When we're onboarding customers, that's been another issue, man. I mean, onboarding customers when you have a chain that has, 52 locations or 411 locations, how are you going to get them in the system? Well, we need a CSV import wizard, right? So, like, we want to be, smarter and more efficient. I don't want to geek out too much on the technology front, but we barely scratched the surface on AI as to where we can take this. And so we have a lot of blue ocean. And right now, we're doing some very basic elementary stuff that, it's elementary to us because we understand the technology. But when you look at the rest of the industry, I hate to say it, but there's a lot of dinosaurs out there, which also creates a lot of opportunity for acquisition. And as we enter into our growth mode, we're also going to be entering into an acquisitive growth mode. So if anyone's listening, if you have any distributors, we're very interested in seeing if we can put a deal in place, because and especially in our service area, in our existing service area. We're in 10 states now. We're growing. We're getting ready to really launch Nevada in a big way. Even though we're headquartered here, we didn't do any business here. But going back to the technology, yeah, I think that we're going to make some pretty big leaps and bounds. And the other benefit is it helps us with like inventory management, not just from the DSD model, but all the other sales channels are all currently controlled by PRISM and will continue to be managed by PRISM. So just the data and the ease of use and the efficiency is what really is going to set this thing apart. And then the partner portals and stuff like that. So when we bring on partners, they'll be able to log on, which they've never been able to before, because this has always been an inside in-house technology, not to be shared with anybody else, industry wide. And so when we're able to give the partners this type of access and this type of level of information and data, it's going to help them make better data-driven decisions. So yeah, we're beyond tickled pink, if you will, on what Prism's going to do for GPOX moving forward, and not just GPOX and Distro Plus and everything else we ultimately end up getting involved in.
Well, bravo to you. I think that's awesome. It's innovative, and it's going to be truly disruptive. And I guess it's safe to say you see AI transforming distribution all over the next couple of years, correct?
Correct. And it's funny, I think that
Yeah.
I think we're finally allowed to say this, but it's like, we're thinking 6, 7, 8 years out. What does that look like? Is that autonomous vehicles? Is that robots? Is it
Crazy.
yeah,
Crazy.
is it automated, 3PL facilities? What does our warehouse look like in 10 years? So we're just trying to keep an open mind. We're trying to stay on the right side of AI, the ethical side of AI, and see how we can use that as a tool, not as a replacement. And so I think that right now, a lot of people are afraid that AI is going to take and kill jobs, and it certainly will in some industries, make no mistake. But I think the people who are the smartest during this, I dare say, revolution, are the people who will leverage and utilize and adopt AI to enhance their abilities to do more work and accomplish more things with less resources. And that's where I think we're going to really be able to, take advantage of this opportunity.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about product expansion. And you talked about, the stores getting from 500 to 1,500. So what's the roadmap to hitting the 1,500 store milestone? All right. And how are the new product programs, like including the multi-SKU rollout and the beverage launch? How's that impacting revenue per store?
Oh, these are all great questions. So the roadmap is kind of twofold. One, I'm sure you probably went through and checked out some of our press releases, but we announced recently that we're establishing a call center here in Las Vegas. We partnered with a company, another publicly traded company called Surge. Surge Pays, SURG is a symbol, great company, where they're helping us get our products into their 10,000 plus locations. And so we have a bunch of different strategic partnerships like that. And then in-house, like, developing a sales team and then developing the different sales channels that we're going after. Because again, now that we're entering into growth mode, we're going to be expanding our scope and our channels, not just being gas station convenience store chains, but also, as you correctly pointed out, the independents, the smoke shops, vape shops, and other specialty retailers. And so we're learning right now, and we're developing, like, I mean, it's infancy stages, man. It's kind of fun. Brings me back. But we're establishing like the sales presentation and the sales process and trying to prove that out now. And once we do, we'll be able to scale up to 24 seats here in Las Vegas. So we'll have a pretty robust call center. We're going to have some people that are going to be going after individual one-off locations, and then some focusing on chains. I mean, my immediate focus is gas station and convenience store chains with between 5 and 35 locations located within Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Wyoming, and South Dakota, and of course Nevada. Those are our target markets, and why we like that is because when we've onboarded chains that have like 400 locations or 50 locations, there's a lot you have to learn. The onboarding is challenging. Heck, even just the reporting and the payments is challenging at first, right? You got to go through that get to know you honeymoon stage. And so I feel that if we can bring on a couple dozen chains of that size, 5 to 35 locations, that will give us a really good sample data of what we can expect as we roll this out, even and increase our footprint to a national footprint. But we're going to run into all the issues, the trials, the tribulations, all the stuff that's associated with an onboarding and technology and distribution. You'll learn things like, okay, well, this chain will only allow DSD distributors between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. and a general manager must be there, or whatever it is. And so you have to learn all those things and understand the culture and then product mix and product placement and all that stuff. So I think that's going to get us in a position where I think we'll be able to anticipate everything and to just further our growth. Further than that, I'm sorry, not further, but in addition to that, trying to find distributors. They don't need to be DSD, but they could just be normal distributors. The perfect persona of what we're looking for is someone that's maybe been in business for last 20 years, has 1 or 2 warehouses, 10 trucks, and does $10 million a year, $20 million a year. No exit strategy. They're just going to retire. So we're looking for people like that that want to have an exit strategy or a liquidity event towards the end of their career. And it's such an accretive move for us, Eric, because at the end of the day, yes, we're getting some of their infrastructure. We're going to convert that into our DSD model, but we're getting some equipment, of course, trucks, whatever, human capital, which is extremely important. But we're also gaining new stores, new products, new product categories, new vendor relationships, just new relationships in general. And so we do, about a half a dozen acquisitions over the next year. I'm sorry, I almost a year. Half a dozen acquisitions over the next 2 years. Well, that's just going to continue to increase our footprint, increase the products that we have available. And as we bring on and onboard one more new product, we can then, of course, make that available to all of our retail partners globally. So that's how we're going to, and I think, just being honest, I think we're going to plow through 1,500 stores. My target, my immediate milestone is 20,000 locations. And I know you got to get there in levels, but that's where my head's at. That's where the team's head's at. 1,500 is just to be conservative, because we do need to have, stops along the way to 20,000.
They always say aim big, aim high, and you know what? I think you're going to do it. You got a lot of energy. I wish. Hey, OTC CEOs, take note. Get the energy this guy has. Well, you have it, man. I'll tell you.
Thanks,
and
man.
You got to have this kind of energy. The undertaking that you guys are doing is just remarkable. I got to ask a question. I want to go back to the fragmented market. The fact, with the single store operators that represent 63% of those convenience stores and gas stations. Why has the single store operator segment been ignored by major distributors? And you're going to, like you said, there's a lot of motion out there. You're going to capture a lot. But what makes GPO Plus uniquely suited to consolidate this overlooked $50 billion market?
Well, I can't speak to the mental state of the executives of these major distributors that are leaving this much money on the table, but I think that they're probably looking at it in like, how can they scale quickly? How can they enter into new markets? And, I wish my answer could have been to you earlier, like, oh, we're just going to sign, how are we going to get to 1,500 stores? I'm going to sign up 2 chains that have 500 stores. The end. I wish I could say that, but that's not what we're going after. Because again, my heart and our values, our corporate values, are all geared towards supporting all businesses. But again, it's really this, the small businesses, helping communities, et cetera. And so we're looking at this through a different lens. One is, we haven't been molested by this industry for the last 20 years. We're all relatively new, so we all have big, bright eyes and are trying to find the best in everything, right? But I think that, sometimes it's the opportunity. You've got these big, ridiculously big 128, 150-year-old distribution companies that have, long-term, I'm sorry, like a long-time, legacy type of approach towards things where they're the behemoth. Something new comes in, you buy it, shelf it, and continue on with business as usual. You see that with every legacy industry. I don't care which industry. If it's been around for over 100 years, it's a true statement. And that's kind of where, our thought process is we like taking these legacy industries and turning them on their head, making them way more efficient and finding out ways to, further monetize, the traditional model by adding, new types of, of opportunities, not just for the companies, but for the retailers. And on the single store operator, they're the ones that are getting, hate to say, I'm just gonna say, they're the ones getting kicked in the nuts every single day. It's middle class typically. The person who owns the store, they work in the store, their kids work in their store, their family member works in the store, and no one's looking out for them. Like no one is, and it kills me. It almost gets me emotional. And we need to do something to really help, stimulate that and create a level playing field for the smaller businesses to compete with all these major companies and major companies participating in cronyism, to be frank. And so the big distributors, they don't really have time because it probably takes the same amount of time to close a deal for 100 locations that it does for 10 locations. So they are on the 100 locations. So I think it's just kind of the path of least resistance, and then people fear what they don't know. So like these main distributors, I don't want to speak for all of them, but they're like, I'll give you an example. When the alternative product category popped up, which is like hemp and kratom, the major distributors shied away from them. They didn't want to take any of those risks. They didn't want to take any chances. So that left an opportunity for companies like us to come in and say, hey, we'll solve that problem. We'll fill that gap and we'll do a great job with it. And kind of what happened was, that's what got us into the industry. Now hemp and kratom represents like less than 8% of our total revenue. So it just shows you, what happens. And that's because we were nimble. We saw opportunities, we pivoted. And I think the big, huge distributors have a hard time pivoting, and they have an even harder time pivoting to service the needs of a small single store or a very small chain, operation.
How is integrating with SearchPay's 10,000 plus store network accelerated GPO Plus's footprint? And what early results or opportunities are emerging from that partnership?
Yes, so Surge is a great company, NASDAQ, SURG. Check it out. My position is buy the stock. It's a great long-term play, but I'm not a financial advisor, so I don't take my financial advice. But no, it's a good company. I like where they're going. It's kind of a fintech play. And so I want to kind of explain their model in a nutshell. I know Brian Cox will probably kill me because I'll probably murder how he would say it. But at the end of the day, they have a fintech product which allows for mobile top-up for mobile devices. So if you have T-Mobile, Verizon, et cetera, and let's say it's easier to go, let's say you're in a city like New York, it's easier to go to your bodega at the corner than it is to go walk 10 blocks to a Verizon or a T-Mobile store. You can actually pay your cell phone bill right then and there in all these different locations. And again, they've got a lot more than that. They've got an amazing POS system that they recently acquired and further developed, and they've been deploying to retail locations. But what we love about it is they have that fintech background with the technology backbone, and they have relationships with that, as you mentioned, over 10,000 locations. And so now we're working with their sales team to create the perfect product offerings that we can go to all their stores, which again, they already have a relationship with, and they're already purchasing or working together with. It's a service, I guess, not a product, but they're already working together in some capacity. So why not try and introduce more products that we know are proven, that we have the sales data for, that have high sales velocity and are great margins for the retailer. And so that's what we're working on. We've been doing predominantly testing over the last few months, and we're fine tuning our presentation and our offering, and we're getting ready to really repackage that and go full steam ahead. So we're beyond thrilled. I think that's something that could accelerate our road to 1,500 and ultimately 20,000 pretty quickly.
Excellent. All right, and let's move on to Distro Plus. All right, the cash and carry hubs. What's the vision behind converting warehouses into cash and carry profit centers, and how does the Austin Mid Hub fit into the national expansion model?
So I can't even believe I didn't bring up cash and carry model yet, because it's something I'm super excited about. Well, earlier when I mentioned that we have swamp coolers in our warehouses, and we're in the process of upgrading our entire warehouse network. Well, when we were doing that, it's like, well, wait a second. If we're already going to be upgrading our warehouse anyway, why not have like a B2B component where you have, well, first off, let me take a step back, and for the benefit of your listeners, let me explain a cash and carry. So a cash and carry is like mini Costco, not that big, but think like a mini Costco, but for local business owners. Um, the products that they have there are to service, gas stations, convenience stores, smoke shops, vape shops, and it's just a big product selection that people can come in, shop in the cash and carry. Again, no different than like a Costco, and bring the products to their store and sell them, and then they go back to a cash and carry when they want to re-up. Now, the downside to that is it's, for most of them, even though they have a lot of products, it's still a fairly limited product selection. And then you also have issues like, who has a master distributorship agreement, et cetera, et cetera. And so cash and carries are very, very prevalent all throughout the country, in the smoke shop, vape shop, and then the independent gas station and convenience store world. So what we've done is, instead of creating like this massive retail experience, we've completely reimagined the whole cash and carry model. What we've done is, instead of having a store, you go into a showroom. In that showroom, we have all the products available on display, so you can try and see and touch every single flavor, scent, et cetera, that's available. So like, let's say it's a disposable nicotine vape. We'll have all of our top selling vapes right then and there that you can sample. If it's, something along the lines of, you want, Delta 9 gummies, obviously we're going to try and push High Cloud, our gummies. By the way, High Cloud with a K, HIGHKLOUD.plus is our website. We're getting ready to launch that as a direct to consumer site. Our gummies are the best, hands down. I take one every single night to shut this brain down, but they're amazing. And when, so going back to the cash and carry model, when you go into the showroom, we'll have everything right there. We'll have all the literature. And then you might have seen a press release saying that we launched our Distro Plus wholesale portal. Well, the significance of getting the wholesale portal, that's kind of part of our tech stack for PRISM, where that is the interface between the DSD and the cash and carry component and our inventory with our warehousing. So when you come in, if you don't have an account, we'll get you an account set up. And there's an onboarding for that too. Business license, sales and use tax, et cetera. Every state's a little bit different. But so you onboard the customer, so now they have an account, and you walk around the room and it's got like a barcode reader. You just scan it like a UPC code and say, I want 10 of these, I want 5 of these caddies, I want 6 of these, blah, blah, blah. You complete the order, the packing slip gets sent down to the warehouse. If the store owner has a vehicle that could fit it, we put it in there. If not, we'll deliver it. And it's a great model. So now, we're creating this new experience where we, in essence, are basically the sales representatives for all these different products. It's unbelievable, and I think it's going to fundamentally change everything, because now I don't need to have a warehouse plus retail. I just need to have the warehouse with the showrooms. So that allows us to scale this thing out into multiple markets, and then the delivery component, that's another thing that really sets us apart. So you'll be able to, go to the wholesale portal. You don't need to come to a cash carry. You can go to the wholesale portal, log into your account, place an order, choose the delivery time. So we're completely, and it might sound so easy because we have Amazon in the world, right? But when you look at the B2B side, what I just described to you is not that simple. It's not that easy. It's very complex. And the fact that we're offering that now, so early on in the life cycle of our company, is pretty cool. And I can't wait to scale that out. So I think ultimately we should have about 8 to 10 cash and carries nationwide.
That's awesome, man. Listen, this has been a fantastic, informative interview. I just want to give you a closing a comment to the shareholders, potential shareholders, people that are looking into GPO Plus, and the floor is yours for closing statements. And may God have mercy on your soul. No, I'm just kidding. The floor is yours, man.
No, I really appreciate it, and I'll tell you, I applaud you for putting this type of forum together. It is really, really hard for OTC companies to get our word out there, and especially good ones. The problem is we kind of have egg on our face from the industry in general, but when you have a company like GPO Plus that has, the right team, has proven out the model and has a lot of opportunity for growth, it's really tough sometimes for people to take us serious and want to take I hate to say it this way, but take a gamble with us, take a chance with us. And so I applaud you for doing this. We need more of this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. What I think the biggest opportunity for GPO Plus is, it's kind of everything we talked about on this spaces, but it's really getting to that 20,000 store mark, because when we do, let's go over the revenues real quick. When we get there, if we're only doing $3,000 a month, which, as I mentioned, some of our stores currently today are doing over 5,000, and I want to get it to 10,000 by increasing the product offering. But if we're only doing 3,000, that's $60 million gross per month, 720 million annualized. That's our focus, and that's where we think that we can do wonders. And then as we start to progress this model, we're going to find other opportunities and other industries that we can get into and do something very similar, from not just a distribution, but just as a service provider standpoint. And as we continue to move forward, we're so excited to be in growth mode. You got to understand, I've got the worst case of ADHD. So for me not to go after every shiny toy for the last 2.5 years and stay so laser focused on the DSD model and getting good at it has been astonishing. And now the team is excited because once you get that taste of success, it's contagious, and that's what we're all aiming for. The one thing that we're not doing well with is the market, and so we're going to have to spend, unfortunately, more time on that. Truth be told, I haven't spent any time on IR. I mean, other than a conference here, or the press releases that we need to put out for compliance standpoint. We just didn't want to go out and start communicating our story and sharing our story with the investment community until we proved out the model and we knew we had something that was going to be sustainable and have a lot of growth. And so that's where we are now. So I think what we need to get better at is communicating with the investors. So I'm going to encourage everyone to please go to gpoplus.com. Please go to our IR section, sign up for GPOX Pulse, our newsletter that we're going to be publishing every other week starting in January. We've had some periodical ones out, but we're going to get on a pretty strict schedule so that all of our shareholders can count on that coming out every week. Anyone that's been following us on social media, first off, all your followers, please help us out. Go to X, everything's at GPO Plus, and my personal is at Pojunis, Pojunis. Please go to our social media platforms, follow, like, share our content, let people know about the company. I'm going to go more, grassroots, and that's kind of is my roots when I was doing all the libertarian stuff. We didn't have the same budget that the Republicans and Democrats had, so we had to get cute, clever, and creative, and we're going to do the same thing. So one thing that we can do is continually put out content, continually explain what our business model in little bite size, like videos and information. And so we're going to do a better job at that. And I think that will ultimately lead to a pretty good groundswell as to where the company can go, where the stock can go. And, right, wrong, or different, we're going to have to spend the time on that now. So again, thank you for having me on. Thank you for this forum. And hopefully you'll invite me back on again.
Absolutely. We're going to have you on for a video podcast so people could put a face to the name. Brett Pojunis, the CEO and president of GPO Plus. Excellent information. And thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all the viewers for being the heroes out there.
That's right. You guys take it easy. Remember, there's more that binds us than breaks us. And have a great and happy Thanksgiving.